They used me like an ATM for years, until I found out I wasn't even their real son. You ever get that gut feeling that something's just off? I always knew my family was a little dysfunctional. But I never thought they'd betray me so deeply, and for so long. Not until I uncovered something that completely changed how I saw them, and how I saw myself. Let me back up. My name's Alex. I'm 28, single, and I make decent money, about $130,000 a year working in cybersecurity. It's not flashy, but it's stable, and I like what I do. I live in a modest 2-bedroom condo just outside of Seattle. I bought it a few years ago, and I've been pretty good with my money ever since I got out of college. Honestly, if you looked at me, you'd probably think I've got a pretty normal, put-together life. But behind the scenes, my family's been quietly draining me dry, and I didn't even realize how deep it went until this year. Growing up, I was the responsible one. My older brother, Ryan, was the golden child. Football star, charming smile, always knew how to win people over. My younger sister, Emily, was the baby, quiet, artistic, and sensitive. I was the middle kid, the one who did all the homework, cleaned up after dinner, and got straight A's without making a fuss. When my parents split up during my sophomore year of high school, everything started shifting. Dad moved out of state and started a new family. Mom, she kind of fell apart for a while. Bills piled up. Meals got simpler. I got my first part-time job at 16 just to help buy groceries and cover my own school supplies. Ryan? He stayed out late, partied hard, barely graduated. Emily? She was too young to really understand what was going on. Fast forward to now. I thought I had left all that behind. I thought being the responsible one would finally pay off. I had a job, savings, and a plan. But my family never stopped treating me like the safety net. It started small. Mom would ask for help with a car repair, $300 here, for $100 there. Then it became, just until the next paycheck. Ryan needed money for a business opportunity, which turned out to be a pyramid scheme. Emily was in and out of therapy, which I was happy to help cover, at first. But no one ever paid me back. Ever. And somehow, I felt guilty even asking. Things came to a head a few months ago when Mom called me crying. Ryan had gotten into some kind of legal trouble. She was vague, and she needed $5,000 fast. She didn't say what for, just that it was urgent and that I wouldn't let my brother go to jail, would I? I was tired. I just worked a 12-hour shift. I had groceries in the back seat. I said I'd call her back. Instead, I called my bank and checked my accounts. Over the last 4 years, I had transferred just over $43,000 to my family. $43,000. That number hit me like a freight train. Rent I could have saved. Vacations I skipped. Student loans I could have paid off sooner. I was furious, but more than that, I felt stupid. Used. Like I was some ATM they never even said thank you to. I decided I wasn't sending another dime. At least not until I got answers. And that's when things got really weird. I told Mom no. For the first time ever. Her voice changed immediately. No more crying. No more pleading. She got cold. Accused me of being selfish. Said I was abandoning the family. That Ryan's situation was life or death. But she wouldn't tell me why. That night I couldn't sleep. Something about the way she said life or death stuck with me. So I did what I do best. I started digging. I'm good with tech. Like really good. It didn't take long to piece together some uncomfortable truths. Ryan wasn't in legal trouble because of some misunderstanding. He'd been arrested for fraud. He'd scammed an elderly couple out of thousands. He was out on bail, and Mom had co-signed the bond. If he skipped court, she'd be on the hook for $10,000. That's what the money was for. And it gets worse. Emily, my sweet, shy sister? She wasn't in therapy anymore. In fact, the clinic I had been sending money to had no record of her being a patient for the last 18 months. I called them myself and pretended to be her fiancé, a lie, but whatever. The receptionist said Emily had stopped coming in after a handful of sessions and never came back. So where was all the money going? I drove over to Mom's house that weekend. I didn't tell her I was coming. I wanted to catch them off guard. What I found shocked me. The house was remodeled. New appliances. Fresh paint. A huge new flat screen. And parked in the driveway? A brand new SUV with a temporary tag. My jaw hit the floor. When Mom opened the door, she looked surprised, but not embarrassed. Alex, what are you doing here? She asked. I didn't even bother with pleasantries. Where did you get the money for all this? I asked. She froze. Just for a second. Then she laughed. Oh, don't be dramatic. It's not what it looks like. But it was. Turns out, my family had been pooling my money to help Ryan get back on his feet. When I asked about Emily's therapy bills, Mom just said, well, she needed other things more. She's been stressed. I lost it. I told them I was done. No more money. No more support. If Ryan went to jail, that was on him. If Mom lost her house, too bad. I had bent over backwards for them for years and they treated me like I owed them something. But the worst was yet to come. Because a few days later, I got a letter in the mail. A legal notice. My name was on the deed to Mom's house. I had no idea how or why, but somehow, they had used my identity to co-sign a second mortgage. And that's when I realized this went way deeper than just family. Borrowing money. They had committed fraud against me. I sat there on my living room floor, that legal notice spread out in front of me, and I couldn't breathe. My name was right there, Alex M. Carter, listed as a co-borrower on a second mortgage I never agreed to. I hadn't signed anything, hadn't even known there was a mortgage being taken out on Mom's house. At first I thought it had to be a mistake. A clerical error. Maybe some kind of identity theft by a stranger. But deep down, I already knew the truth. It wasn't a stranger. It was my own family. After I calmed down enough to think clearly, I pulled out my laptop and got to work. I requested copies of all the loan documents from the mortgage lender. The woman on the phone was polite, and after I verified my identity, she said they'd email me scanned copies within the hour. What I got made my blood run cold. There it was. A full loan packet for $75,000. Application forms, income statements faked, and a signature page with my name scribbled at the bottom. It didn't even look close to my real signature. It was obvious forgery, but apparently it had been enough. The loan had been processed 9 months earlier. And now I was legally on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars. I called my mom. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I texted her. We need to talk. Now. A few hours later, she finally responded. Her message read, I don't know why you're so upset. We were going to tell you. We just didn't want you to worry. Didn't want me to worry? Are you serious? I didn't respond. I drove over. When I got there, Ryan was in the front yard, shirtless and drinking a beer like it was a lazy Sunday. Hey, little bro, he said, barely looking up. You still mad about the money thing? I didn't answer. I went straight to the door. Mom opened it before I even knocked. She must have seen the look on my face, because she stepped back, arms up like I was a threat. Alex, calm down, she said. Let's just sit down and talk. No. You forged my name. That's identity theft. That's fraud, Mom. You could go to jail for this. That got her attention. She looked scared, but not sorry. Okay, she said quickly. Yes, we used your name. But we had no choice. The bank wouldn't approve the loan otherwise. Ryan needed the money to settle some old debts, and I was behind on the house. We were going to lose it. I stared at her. You stole from me. Her eyes filled with tears, and she grabbed my hands. I didn't steal from you. You're my son. I trusted that you'd understand. Families help each other. I pulled my hands back. That's not help. That's exploitation. Ryan wandered in, hearing the tail end of that. Man, you're being real dramatic. It's not like it ruined your life. You make good money. Just deal with it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. I'm calling a lawyer, I said. And I'm reporting this. That changed the mood fast. Mom's face crumbled. Alex, if you do that, I could go to prison. Please, don't do this to your mother. There it was again. That guilt. That emotional blackmail they'd always used to keep me in line. But this time, I didn't flinch. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you signed my name. I walked out and didn't look back. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and legal consultations. The lawyer I hired was calm and efficient. He said what I already knew, this was a clear case of fraud. But going after my mom and brother meant pressing criminal charges. I had a decision to make. The legal path wasn't easy. Pressing charges meant tearing what little was left of our family to pieces. And it could ruin them financially and publicly. But if I didn't, I'd be stuck with a mountain of debt and ruined credit. I decided to file a police report. As much as it hurt, I needed to protect myself. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about principle. If I let this go, what next? Would they open credit cards in my name? Take out another loan? I wasn't going to be their bank anymore. About 2 weeks after the report was filed, I got a call from a detective handling the case. He was polite but serious. We've reviewed the documents and confirmed the signature doesn't match your past financial records. We're proceeding with a warrant to question your mother and brother. Just a heads up, it might get messy. Messy didn't even begin to cover it. That night, I got about a dozen missed calls from my mom. Then Emily called. She hadn't been involved in any of this, at least I didn't think so. Her voice was shaky. Alex, what's going on? Mom's freaking out. She said the cops came to the house. I told her everything. To my surprise, she didn't defend them. In fact, she sounded relieved. I didn't know they were doing that, she said quietly. But I'm not surprised. Mom's always seen you as the fixer. The one who'd never say no. I sat there in silence. Then she said something that changed everything. Alex, you're not the first person she's done this to. What do you mean? I wasn't going to tell you, but when I was in college, she took out a private loan in my name. I found out after graduation. She said it was for my tuition, but it was actually to pay off some of Ryan's gambling debts. I was stunned. And you didn't report it? I was scared. She said she'd ruin my credit even more if I made a fuss. So it wasn't just me. This wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a pattern. I realized then that my mom wasn't just struggling or making bad decisions. She was manipulative. And dangerous. I knew what I had to do. I pushed forward with the case. And then something unexpected happened. A few weeks later, my lawyer received a call from the mortgage lender's legal team. They offered to settle, quietly. Apparently, once the forgery came to light, they didn't want to deal with a high-profile fraud case involving stolen identity and a potentially bogus approval process. The offer? If I dropped the police report, they'd remove my name from the loan and reassign the full responsibility to the other borrower, Mom. I'd be free and clear. But she wouldn't be. I sat across from my lawyer in a sterile conference room, my stomach twisted in knots. So, he said, laying out the offer again. If you agree not to pursue criminal charges, the lender will remove your name from the mortgage and fully assign the debt to your mother. It sounded like freedom. No more sleepless nights worrying about my credit. No more fearing the fallout of a fraud charge on my record, something I'd done nothing to deserve. But also, no justice. No accountability. They're offering this, I said slowly, because they know the process was flawed. My lawyer nodded. Probably. They should have verified the signature better, especially given the loan amount and your income bracket. If this went public, it could look very bad for them. And if I don't take the deal, then it goes to court. Your mother and brother will be investigated further. Possible jail time. And the mortgage? Still on your name until it's resolved. It was one of those moments where every option felt like a loss. I didn't want my mother to go to prison. I didn't even really want revenge. I just wanted my life back. And some peace. So I signed the agreement. That same day, the lender sent over an updated contract. My name was officially removed. The balance of the loan was now under Mom's name alone. I wouldn't be liable for a single dollar of it. But I had one condition of my own. I wanted it in writing that I was no longer to be contacted by the lender, by the mortgage company, or by anyone regarding this matter again. I was out. Period. I walked out of that office feeling both lighter and strangely empty. Freedom came with a price. The fallout from all this wasn't quiet. Not even close. Mom found out I'd taken the deal and flipped out. She called me screaming, accusing me of ruining her life. And abandoning the family. You could have just helped, she yelled through the phone. Why did you have to be so selfish? I hung up. I didn't have the energy anymore. A few days later, Ryan left a voicemail saying I was a traitor. And that family always comes first. He also mentioned something about suing me for emotional distress, which was so absurd I actually laughed out loud. I blocked both of them. The only person I still talked to was Emily. And even that became strained after a while. She apologized again and again for not telling me sooner about the loan Mom took out in her name. I told her I didn't blame her. But I could hear the tension in her voice, the way she kept defending our mom in little ways. She's not well, Alex, she said. She's desperate. I think she needs help more than punishment. But it wasn't about help anymore. It was about boundaries. And mine had been shattered too many times. I tried to move on with my life. I poured myself into work. I went to the gym. I even started going to therapy, just to unpack everything. The betrayal. The guilt. The fact that I still missed them, even after everything they'd done. Then, about 2 months later, something strange happened. I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But something told me I should. Hello? I said. There was a pause. Then a woman's voice I didn't recognize said, Hi. Is this Alex Carter? Yes. My name is Marla. I work in the fraud investigation department at Cascade Credit Union. You're listed as a reference on a recent loan application. Do you have a moment? My stomach dropped. What loan application? She hesitated. A personal loan request filed under the name Ryan Carter. He listed you as his employer and financial co-signer. I was speechless. Ryan was at it again. He was trying to use me, again. I asked her to email me a copy of the application. And sure enough, there it was. My name. My work info. And a forged signature. I couldn't believe it. He was bold enough to try it again after everything. But this time, I didn't let it slide. I called the detective who had worked on the original case. I forwarded the documents. I gave a full statement. And this time, Ryan wasn't so lucky. He was arrested 2 weeks later and charged with attempted fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Mom posted about it on Facebook. Of course she did. She painted him as a victim. Said he was struggling mentally, and that I was responsible for the arrest. She even posted a passive-aggressive status. Some people forget where they came from the moment they have a little money. It got a handful of likes. Mostly from cousins and old family friends who didn't know the whole story. I was tempted to post the truth. To upload the forged documents. To expose it all. But I didn't. Let them think what they want. The people who mattered, my close friends, my real support system, they knew. They stood by me. That was enough. I wish I could say that's where it ends. That justice was served and I walked away clean. But just when I thought everything was behind me, another bombshell hit. Emily called, crying. I need to tell you something, she said. What is it? She hesitated. There's something Mom told me when I was 16. I didn't believe her then, but now I'm not so sure. I sat down. She said you weren't our real brother. I froze when Emily said it. What do you mean, not our real brother? She sniffled on the other end of the line. I don't know all the details. I never asked. It sounded crazy back then, just one of Mom's weird guilt trips, but now, after all the lies, the manipulation, the fraud, anything felt possible. Tell me exactly what she said, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She told me that you were never supposed to stay with us. That Dad brought you home one day before Ryan was born. Said you were just a baby someone left behind. Like, abandoned or something. She said she didn't even want you at first, but Dad insisted. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily went on. She said you were lucky she raised you. That without her, you'd be nothing. I sat back, heart pounding. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I thought back to my childhood, things that had never made sense suddenly started clicking. Like how I was the only one who didn't have baby pictures in the hallway. How Mom always acted colder toward me. How relatives would sometimes say I looked different from Ryan and Emily, then quickly change the subject. All those weird moments I had brushed off were coming back like knives. Do you think it's true? I asked. Emily hesitated. I don't know. But I think there's a way to find out. She suggested something simple, a DNA test. We each ordered one from the same company. No dramatic reveals, no swabs in a lab coat, just 2 kits mailed to our apartments, a few cheek swabs, and a couple weeks of waiting. During that time, I could barely sleep. I went down rabbit holes of my own memories. I called an old neighbor who used to babysit us. She remembered me being quiet and always polite. But she also mentioned something weird. You were just there one day, she said. I don't remember your mom being pregnant with you. One day she had 1 kid, the next there were 2. That didn't make sense. And yet, it somehow did. The results finally came in. Emily and I had no genetic relation. Not half-siblings. Not cousins. Nothing. I wasn't her brother by blood. I wasn't anyone's brother. I stared at that screen for a long time. It was all true. Every lie, every cold shoulder, every time I felt like an outsider growing up, it had all been real. I didn't belong. I sat with that for a long time. Let it settle in like a stone in my chest. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I ordered a family finder report to see if anyone out there was a biological match. A week later, I got a hit. A woman named Jen R. Morgan, a 52-year-old schoolteacher from Oregon, was listed as a 94% match. It said she was likely my biological mother. I didn't know what to do. Do I message her? Do I just show up? I waited a few days, reread her profile a dozen times, and finally worked up the courage to send a message. Hi Jenna. I know this is probably unexpected. My name is Alex Carter. I recently took a DNA test, and it says we're closely related. I was adopted, but I was never told. I'm just trying to understand where I come from. If you're open to talking, I'd really appreciate it. I expected nothing. Maybe silence. Maybe a confused or angry response. But 2 days later she wrote back. Oh my God! Alex? I've been looking for you for over 25 years. We ended up talking on the phone that night. She cried. I cried. It was like something out of a movie. She told me she had given birth to a baby boy when she was 20. She was young, scared, and broke. Her parents forced her to give me up. But something went wrong with the adoption. She never got any confirmation, and when she tried to find me years later, there were no records. It was like I vanished. I always wondered where you ended up, she said. If you were safe. If you were loved. I didn't know how to tell her the truth. That I had been taken in by a family who used me, who resented me, who committed fraud in my name, who made me feel like a burden from the moment I could walk. Instead, I just said, "I'm okay now. I really am." She lived about 3 hours away. We agreed to meet in person the following weekend. I didn't tell anyone in my old family. When I pulled up to her little yellow house in Oregon, she was already waiting on the porch. And the second we hugged, it just clicked. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was home. Over the next few weeks, Jenna and I started building a relationship. It was slow, cautious, but honest. She answered every question I had. She even gave me a box of baby photos she'd kept all those years. My first blanket. A tiny hospital bracelet with my name. My real name. I learned that my birth name wasn't even Alex. It was Nathaniel Morgan. They renamed me when I was taken in. Everything about my past was a lie. But the future? That was still mine to write. I decided to legally change my name back to Nathaniel. It was scary, but freeing. Like shedding an old skin I'd never asked to wear. Emily was the only one from the old family I still talked to, and even that was down to an occasional check-in. I told her about Jenna. About the DNA test. She was quiet, then said, "I always wondered why Mom treated you different. I just didn't know how deep it went." Neither did I. Mom tried calling again, after Ryan got sentenced to 6 months for the attempted loan fraud, but I didn't answer. I was done. I had nothing left to say. Let them tell whatever version of the story they wanted. I had a new one now. One where I wasn't the family wallet, the scapegoat, or the outsider. I was just me. And for the first time ever, that was enough. 6 months had passed since I met Jenna, my biological mother. Since I stopped answering calls from my old family. Since I legally reclaimed my name, Nathaniel Morgan. And for the first time in a long time, my life felt like it was finally mine. I moved into a new apartment across town. I took a few weeks off work to clear my head, reset, and focus on building a new foundation. Therapy became a regular part of my life. So did quiet evenings with a book, or spontaneous dinners with Jenna and her husband, Dan. They weren't trying to make up for lost time. They weren't smothering me with guilt or fake sentiment. They just showed up. Kindly, gently. And they let me be myself. I still caught myself wondering about Ryan and Mom. About whether Emily was okay. I knew Ryan was serving his sentence, 6 months in probation, thanks to a decent public defender and Mom pulling strings to beg leniency for his mental health struggles. The irony was that she never once suggested I might have needed help after all the things they put me through. And Mom? I didn't know what she was doing. I hadn't heard a word from her in months. Until the day the letter arrived. It was a regular white envelope, handwritten, no return address. Just my new name. Nathaniel Morgan. I knew immediately who it was from. I waited a whole day before opening it. The letter was only 1 page. The handwriting was familiar, tight, neat, almost surgical in how controlled it was. Nathaniel. I heard what you did. About the DNA test. About Jenna. About changing your name. I hope you're happy now. I raised you. I fed you. I gave you a roof over your head. And this is how you repay me? By calling me a criminal? By abandoning your family? Fine. Have your new life. Just know this, your real mother may have birthed you, but I made you who you are. You were mine. And you still are. Don't forget that. Mom. I read it twice. Not a single apology. No ownership. No remorse. Just control. One last attempt to stake a claim on me. To make me feel like I owed her. But something inside me had changed. 6 months ago, that letter would have torn me apart. I would have doubted myself. Questioned everything. Now? I folded it up, slid it into a file marked legal, and moved on. No rage. No panic. Just calm. That letter was her way of telling me I made the right choice. That leaving was the only way to save myself. Later that week, Emily called again. She was still talking to Mom, but just barely. Ryan was out of jail and already getting into trouble again. A new girlfriend. A sketchy car rental. Business. Same old story. I'm thinking of moving, Emily said softly. Far away. Maybe even out of state. I encouraged her. You deserve a fresh start, I said. We both do. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, do you think Mom ever really loved us? I thought about it. About the way Mom treated us like puzzle pieces that had to fit a shape she'd already decided on. About the lies. The manipulation. The guilt. I think, I said slowly, she loved control more than she loved us. Emily didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, yeah. That sounds about right. Months passed. Then a year. I reconnected with my biological grandparents through Jenna. Turns out, they had no idea she was forced to give me up. They welcomed me with tears and hugs, and the kind of affection I hadn't realized I'd been starving for my entire life. I went back to school, part-time, just to study things I'd always been interested in: psychology, family systems, even trauma recovery. I started thinking about becoming a counselor someday, helping other people break free from the cycles that had nearly crushed me. And then, one evening, something strange happened. I got a message on social media, from someone I didn't recognize. A woman named Laura. "Hey Nathaniel. You don't know me, but I think we might be half-siblings. I just took a DNA test, and your name came up." Another shock. Another twist. Another chapter. I messaged her back. "I'd love to talk. I'm just starting to understand where I come from too." And I meant it. My story wasn't ending, it was just beginning. Final thoughts. People always talk about blood being thicker than water, about family being forever. But here's what I learned. Family is not just who shares your DNA. It's who shows up, who respects you, who doesn't need to control you to love you. Sometimes you have to walk away from the ones who raised you to find the ones who are waiting for you. And sometimes, when you finally find yourself, you realize that's the most important reunion of all.